So questions about that. Let's discuss that, the idea of the 10 relational needs a little bit. I'm going to go off screen share. If I need to go back on to show you something, that'll be great. Tell me what you think of all that.
Well, it's a good reminder, and as I look around the screen here, I would assume most of the guys on here have seen that. And I see Cindy, maybe that's you, but gals have seen that, most guys and gals. I think the thing it affirms in me is making that kind of a discipleship 101 issue, because I've found I get downstream in a relationship, any kind of training, discipleship relationship, and it's like, whoops, do we even know we're speaking the same language here around what you would need, what would help you feel trust, safety, security? So you just affirmed that for me. So thank you.
Yeah, that's good. On the acceptance and security, it seems like both of them talk a lot about safety. I don't know if I could necessarily delineate those two. How would you describe the difference in that need for safety, or how it's conveying safety in acceptance versus security?
Yeah, I think the element of relational safety and security could be similar to the acceptance. The idea of acceptance is that it's the converse or the opposite of behavior-based acceptance. I accept you if you behave rightly. So it's this desire for close relationship. When the need for relational security is experienced, it's often when something something feels broken, something feels disconnected, we'll experience the need for security. I need to go make this right. I need to go figure it out. When it's the acceptance one, it's more like I feel like I'm being judged. I feel like I'm being put out because of something bad I did. That's how the need for acceptance. I don't feel like unless I do everything right, I won't be accepted. Where in the security side, relationally, it would manifest itself in that idea that I need to fix it. I feel like there's a disconnection. There's a rupture in relationship, and I'm gonna pursue making it right. That's the relationship side of security. On the physical side, it's things like up is up, down is down. We have systems in place that life has a rhythm and a structure that makes us feel like, okay, I know what's coming. An example of human beings that experience a lot of disconnect in the home, in their family of origin. They don't, or a lot of moving around. They can often feel very insecure in how they see the world. They don't attach to anything. They don't feel like there's anything stable. By the way, the Neil Anderson guys, they would say the three top human needs are security, significance, and acceptance. And then so this 10 is just a little bigger extrapolation out of that. And so the idea that something is predictable here. I don't have to be concerned that everything's going to change tomorrow. So that's how the physical need for security rolls out.
That's helpful. Thanks for that.
Do you think that if there's a spectrum, and you kind of described, on one side of the spectrum is the needs shouldn't exist. If you're a mature Christian, you have everything you need in Jesus. So that would be maybe one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum would be, everybody's responsible for meeting all my needs all the time, 100%, feeling very, very needy in an unhealthy way. Do you tend to speak more, or what you guys think? Is it 50-50 of the population of the world that we speak to? Is it more, 70-30, 70% of people are more in, denial of their needs? Or just where do you think the people that we're talking to that we're going to train in this, who do we speak to more?
Pat, did you get that?
I thought he was asking you all.
Well, I'm asking you and everybody. Yeah, just
Oh.
just where we see the emphasis on that.
I mean, I just look at Rich Thatcher's picture and it's like 100% denial. So, I mean, let's just start with us.
It's like he's just a catatonic. He's shocked by this. I would say it depends on the kind of person. What I run into in those who would consider themselves mature, that would be they want to trust in their own ability to do it on their own. There's a sense of being in control and no need to be vulnerable. It comes from those who perceive themselves as mature. I think those who would be grabby would be equally immature, but at least they're more aware of their need for people. And one thing that I didn't make a big point of, and it'll show up in some of the skills, when you have a physical need, and someone comes up and knocks on your door, and says, "I know you're a Christian. You have to feed me." You would be right to say, "Well, actually, no, I don't have to feed you." But if they walk up to your door and knock, say, "You are a Christian, would you please feed me?" That is always an appropriate request for a human being to make. Would you care for me by meeting my physical need? It is not grabby to make the request. It's grabby if you say you're a jerk or you should or anything else, but I say, "I'm hungry, will you feed me?" That is an appropriate question for a human being. My premise would be the same thing would be true. It is always inappropriate to say, "I have a need for security, you have to meet it." No, I don't. But for you to make a request for care, it is always appropriate. Learning how to do that skillfully and not grabby is part of being good at relationship. But it's always okay to ask. It's never okay to demand. That crosses into sin. And part of this is in community, in marriage, or in small group, or in your church, as you begin to make covenants that, yes, we do want to express care for one another relationally, then that becomes a more normal thing to request. And it becomes more normative, and people don't feel quite the same hidden need to be grabby when there's kind of an agreement. No, I do want to care for you. Let me know how I can care for you. Then people can, in a healthy way, begin to make those requests, because they know they're not going to be judged for being weak or extra grace required people. They're the grabby ones. Stay away from them. But they can begin to learn healthy ways. And it becomes this reciprocal thing, because it's not just your job to meet my needs. It's in healthy relationships, it's my job to care for you. And so we develop this interdependency, not a one-way vacuum cleaner just pulling care. That's unhealthy. And so we want to create that understanding that this is a relationship, not a license to grab.
Hey, Pat, just a follow-up question on that. So wouldn't we try to be coaching people, or just even our own lives too, thinking about the idea that a healthy relationship also has the freedom to decline? If somebody, so it seems like what happens, right, is all of a sudden I get run through with a spear of, one of those things, those negative emotions, judgment or anger or, harsh word, how it comes out. You get run through with the spear and you're like, what happened? Oh, you had this need that you probably didn't express as a question, right? As a request. You had this need I didn't meet that need, and now you're running me through. Well, you could see there's sort of that one problem of like, so you didn't meet my needs, so now I get the right to run you through with that, which obviously is a problem. But then the other issue is, well, what if I'm not capable of, or available to, or inclined to, like, shouldn't a healthy relationship give you that ability to say, I have to decline to be able to meet that need in that way that you want it?
Yep, absolutely. What I don't think is okay, I think it's very appropriate to say, I cannot, I'm sorry, I don't think I can accomplish what you're requesting of me. But what would be, I think, important in marriage and in the body would be to say, I want you to be cared for. Could we talk about other appropriate ways that I might be able to care for you, or other opportunities? What I don't want you to walk away from this and saying, I don't care about your needs. If we convey that to another human being, that we don't care about them or that they're healthy, I don't think we've imaged Christ to them. But for sure, we have limits. We have to accept our limits, and people have to understand that everyone there are boundaries, human boundaries, relational boundaries that we have. When we're talking about marriage, I think there's probably less of those than we would want to admit. I think there's more opportunities for us to express care if we stay in relational mode than we would want to admit. We could do more to care. We could create different rhythms of care. We could form different habits. We can make room in our marriage relationships. And the reason I say that, Greg, is one of the things that we see is oftentimes one or the other will come in and say, well, they're just so needy, I can't possibly do it. Well, I'm not sure they've really done it, put together any kind of healthy or appropriate construct to try to do it in a way that could be successful. They just feel overwhelmed by it, and so they just throw up their hands and go, I can't do it. It's too much. And so part of our job when we're training couples is say, well, let's just make some progress. Let's experience a little connection. Let's see if this is important to us. And I do think humans, when we establish those rhythms, have a far greater capacity to be in care or relational mode than we realize. So a lot of our capacity, I think, is fear of what that might look like. And as we practice it, we grow in the skill and our competency. I believe we typically land in a place where, wow, we can actually care a lot more than would have seemed possible when we first start peeking up under the hood of our hearts or paying attention to people's care. So yes, that's true. We have to be able to define our own limits, but I think those limits always have to bring care and hope that, can I help you find appropriate ways, or an appropriate person? I want you to know what you're feeling is important. That's how I would maybe keep those two things in balance.
I'm having a couple thoughts, even back to the previous question, but that Nathan, you asked. But on this, something that's really helped me, and I think you're doing this. Well, I know you're doing this, but maybe there'd be room for more of an emphasis on keeping connection and oneness the goal. Is what really, to Greg's question, shifts me.
Yep.
When someone comes to me and asks me, or being needy, if the issue is primary, I might respond real bad. But if the relationship and oneness is priority, then I might come up with all kinds of boundaries. So that brings up the issue of boundaries, being able to express boundaries. I like Danny Silk's word for this is when you have two powerful people coming together based on the Timothy verse, who've not been given a spirit of fear, but one of love, self-control, and power. When you have two strong individuals coming together, then they can trust each other, kind of push and pull appropriately. When you have one individual is not as strong in their identity in the Lord, and this is actually getting to Nathan's point, we're always going to be weaker in one area over another. It really takes the stronger person to just be more fully present and walk through love and care there. And so to Nathan's question, you know, are we finding certainly maturity? And that's where I just heard you going, Pat, is, hey, we can mature in these things. And that is a hopeful message. I need to remind myself of that. You know, I can grow in this, and God's concerned with growth, you know. But I tend to think of this, going back to my architecture days, of thinking of it more like different competencies and different thinking hats. We used the 6 thinking hats for a lot of team builders and problem solving. And I'm sure Greg Miller doesn't use that at all anymore. But anyway, yeah, I'm outdated. But that's how I think of it. Even with someone that comes into my church for the first time, they may be strong in one hat, but really weak in another. And the hat just deals with different competencies. Now, I would put underneath those, we may be strong in different competencies, things just straight maturity. You know, is this a teenager? Is this a 2-year-old, you know, someone who just really needs a lot of training? Or is this a teenager? Or is this someone who maybe is strong in one area, but not strong in another? Depending on the makeup, you know, if I go to USC and all undergrads, I mean, all incoming 18-year-olds can just be so dependent. They have not stepped into that fully functioning adult, right? And so I would expect their emotional acumen just to be really low, you know. Whereas, like, even this past Sunday, we had a guy visit our outdoor, you know, gathering, and it was someone who's done a lot of missionary work, and I'd fully expect him to maybe have a competency in one area, but maybe not as much in another. As a whole, this gets us thinking more meta here. Is, I would say, on a whole, we're in a season, a culture that, you know, wants bigger government, wants quick fixes, wants us to be able to push a button and get what we want. So all of that, I think, is working against individuals really being those powerful people, you know, even knowing, why am I male? Why am I here? What is my purpose? Boy, those are like metaphysics questions that are not being answered. They're just being handed the next quick fix. So it's a huge I think this is a huge challenge. I lost Brandon on that, I could tell. Sorry, bro. Brandon's like, can I come over now and hang out? I need a break.
I need a new hat.
I would say, you know, to your question, Nathan, at least from my experience, the circles I've been in my whole life, and church circles as well, later in life, is you know, any type of emotional or relational need, however that's defined, to have those does equal immaturity. That's definitely been the trend that I've seen. And as I attempt to, you know, inject this in the people I get to be around, I find people struggle in that they feel, it's like they feel dirty or sinful for having needs, like, you know, just something's wrong with me. I shouldn't have these needs. They certainly shouldn't be filled from people. But I love what you said, Pat. You know, on the flip side of the very needy, is trying to show them, like, okay, you have needs, that's okay, but how can these be met appropriately? That's really great insight. Thanks.
Yeah, just another thing I'd like to add to that, as you were saying that, Nathan, just recently realizing that obviously someone who has a lot of needs we realize they have needs. Or there's a weakness in their life. I don't know if we can call it that, a weakness, but there's a need. But someone who isn't vulnerable, but comes across as not needing, might even have more needs, but they're not able to. So I think just learning to show a lot of compassion to someone and create a safe place where they can actually learn, like, let themselves be needy. But I think I've been tricked into thinking that's a place of strength when it's not actually a place of strength. And it's a place that needs compassion and needs to create a safe environment for. But that's just another piece on that, where I don't think it's like the spectrum isn't like weak to strong. So the grabbers are the weak ones, and the ones that aren't vulnerable and have it all together are the strong ones. It's actually, they're both positions of weakness, and there's a position of strength somewhere else, which is able to say, these are my needs, and would you? So.
Yeah, I would wonder, Dov, I appreciate that distinction you make there. I would wonder if there's not both elements of weakness and strength in both of those places. Mm-hmm. So there can be a place of weakness in the one who's grabby because they don't have a mature way of responding or returning care, but they have a real strength and awareness of their need for relationship and connection. And as you mentioned, there can be a strength of resolve and focus and discipline in the person who doesn't express it, but they're weak in their capacity to understand how important relationship is, and that if they don't experience some kind of emotional awareness, it can end up being pretty unhealthy for them. So they express it differently, but each one has a balance point. So there's a 2x2 square in there somewhere. That's the perfect picture of maturity.
Let's cook it up. Let's make it happen.
Well, how are you guys doing for time? Can I walk through another module here, or do you feel like we can call that good? I don't want to. We won't be able to discuss it, which I probably would. My gut would say don't do another one.
Yeah, I need to get off, but
okay.
It's real good. I want to keep doing this.
Your gut says no, but what does your left index finger say?
My left index finger says I should stop the recording and say goodbye to you guys. Let's get on with your days. Appreciate you investing a little time here. And we'll...
Hey, Pat, what were the 3 nesses you said? There was aloneness, brokenness,
and fallenness, which is a real sin.
Well, thanks for pulling us together.
Yep.
You bet. It's good to be with you guys.
Thankful for what you do.
You bet. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Onward and upward. Have a great